welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us here today for the e-commerce roundtable. We're excited to get started. A few housekeeping items. We've got everyone muted upon entry, but we do want to encourage you to use that chat feature to talk with each other and to share questions as our panelists begin to speak here in a moment. And we'll get to those questions at the end of each session. I'd like to share with you the agenda for today, just so you know a little bit about what to expect. And before that, we'll do a brief introduction to PASA. For those of you who may not know PASA, PASA Sustainable Agriculture is a Pennsylvania-based association of farmers and change makers cultivating environmentally sound, economically viable, and community-focused farms and food systems. Today, we have speakers Kristin Illick with Liberty Gardens, Robert Todd from Down to Earth Harvest, and Wenk from Three Springs Fruit Farm. We'll be welcoming everyone and getting right into the panel discussion from 7 to 7:17 p.m. And then we'll hop into breakout rooms for about 10 minutes. We do want everyone, if you can, to turn on your video and meet your fellow attendees and the panelists in the breakout room. So just a fair warning, if you'd like, we'd like for you to turn on your camera and unmute yourselves when we get into those breakout rooms here at about 15 after. So after the breakout rooms, we'll have a brief discussion where we'll discuss the takeaways and any really great resources we discovered in those rooms. And then we'll hop right back into the panel discussion. We'll do some quick wrap up and a Q&A there at the end. And so please feel free to just continue to throw those questions in the chat and we'll get to those questions at the end of the panel. And so without further ado, let me just spotlight our panelists here so you can start to meet the folks that will be sharing resources with you today. Great. There we go. All right. Welcome, everyone. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hop right in with the first topic. And our first speaker on the first topic today will be Bob. And the question is, can you share with us, where did you start? What did your online presence used to look like versus where you're at now? And share a little bit about how you incrementally got there.
Started farming in 2010, and we were 3 farmers markets and a small CSA, and it was kind of handed to us. We were involved with Farm to City, and there wasn't a whole lot of marketing effort up front. As time resources got slimmer and slimmer as we kind of matured, started having to make, say, choices about where we spent our time. And after 2018, I think it was a pretty wet year for us. Went back and reviewed. Felt like we weren't in charge of making choices about our life in a way. The farm kind of took control. We were doing 3 farmers markets in a CSA, and the family was growing. So we were either going to go all farmers markets or all kind of this hybrid CSA, and we took that route using Farmigo software in 2019. As far as the marketing aspect, we've had pretty modest growth expectations. A lot of it's been word of mouth. If we do put some resources out there, it's usually in SEO, looking for link backs and maybe some keywords through our website. Just knowing how my wife and I find local businesses, it's usually through a Google search. So just being on that front page. My wife does keep up a Facebook page and a little bit of Instagram, but it's certainly not a priority for us. Did I answer the question fully?
Yeah, absolutely. You're sharing a little bit about your social media, and I just wonder, when you guys first got started, was that focus on social media there early on, or is that something you grew into as you developed your e-commerce and online store?
It's never been a focal point for us. When we first started, we kind of took over a farmer's market in Center City. So there's plenty of exposure there, just face to face. Then our first farm was on a main street, and so a lot of people stopped in and put a sign out front. think one of my things about, I feel like you're talking to the same people over and over through social media. It's a great way to maybe engage customers you have or friends, but sometimes you're engaging people that maybe aren't really a target customer, maybe aren't in your neighborhood. I'm from Kansas. People follow us from Kansas. We get a lot of likes from mom and sister and all that, but we felt like if we were going to focus on sales, we wanted to get people we didn't know, and that was mainly through focusing on kind of like an online presence.
Yeah. How, when you started your online store, did you stick with the same platforms that you onboarded with, or did you find that there was something that wasn't working and you wanted to swap out as time passed?
Yeah, so it was, when we took CSA signups, it would be through paper form, and then it was through Google Forms. And once I wouldn't say shopped around too much, but we landed on Farmigo. It's really a stripped down kind of web platform. We liked that it was low commitment up front, and I think it's 2% of sales. So we just felt like we wanted to be in control of it in a way, but we did need maybe some scaffolding in a way to kind of create on top of it. And we've really been happy with the way Farmigo's not had a lot of bells and whistles in a way. Like, it's keeps you from kind of daydreaming about it too much. It's just, it is what it is. It's pretty intuitive for the user, and it spits out all the reports for us. And it's kind of a running joke that just do whatever the printer tells us. You hit a couple buttons and it spits out everything you're supposed to do for that day in terms of harvest list, pack lists. There's no more trips to the bank, and just a good statement of account. It's really kind of put us on autopilot on that front, and we can focus on more of the nuts and bolts things here at the farm.
Great. Thank you for sharing. Kristin, would you like to tell us a little bit about where you started with your online presence, what that looked like then, and where you're at now?
Sure. Hi, everyone. We started, you're asking me, right? I didn't hear it. Yeah, great. We started farming in 2000. And when we first started, it was primarily farmers markets, a lot in New York City and some locally. We had a few restaurants on the side. As time went on, we got more and more restaurants, which really suited our size. We were only growing on about an acre of land, a lot of it under plastic. And we really had we had no online presence until probably 2008, and we finally put up a website, which was outdated before it even got online. However, it had two important things. It had really good pictures, and it had our phone number. And since we had transitioned to really having maybe 24 customers in the form of chefs, we did not need to be reaching a lot of people. We just needed to be found when someone, Googled us. Our system was not very high tech. I think the chefs found it fairly charming. We sent out an availability list twice a week through email. They could email it back to us what their request was, or they could call in. It gave us some flexibility with our numbers. We could call them if we had extra. We could call them if we didn't have enough. We were able to make our orders that way, but it was a lot of hand filling in of both pick sheets and invoices, and then later adding it to QuickBooks. We thought about doing e-commerce. Our chefs would have really liked us to have done e-commerce, but we were dragging our feet and busy farming, and it was, our marketing really consisted of word of mouth. So whenever a chef moved to a new restaurant, or brought someone new on, we just moved with them. We didn't have to work very hard to find new customers. We were very lucky in that way. But last March, I'd say probably 90%, 80% of our business was in New York City, and all of those restaurants closed within a week. And so being the kind of person who, we usually research everything and make really long pros and cons lists and take a long time to decide. And instead we needed to get something up within a few days. And so I asked around and I went with Square, because why? It was easy, it looked good, it was competitively priced. It's not specifically for farmers at all, and that's some of its drawback. A lot of restaurants use it, but a friend told me if you need to get something up in a few hours, try this software. And so that's the direction that we went. There have been many times where I've been frustrated with it and I thought of changing, but we had already invested so much in it, and we were able to switch to selling from, instead of 15 chefs, we were selling to 150 people within a week. So that worked. Great.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Ben, would you like to share with us a little bit about your journey with e-commerce?
Sure. So we started doing farmers markets in 2007. And our first online presence, oddly enough, was MySpace. Kind of funny and embarrassing at the same time. As we started doing these farmers markets, we had a couple things that we were starting to notice with our customers. One, they were looking for bulk and seconds. And the way we set up our stand, I never like having seconds on our farmers market stand, but we always have them. Every farm has them. And so we started taking phone orders and email orders for bulk buys and seconds to pick up at market. The only thing was we would take these orders, we would communicate it across our whole team, we'd spend extra time prepping everything, and then nobody would show up, or the redemption rate was super low. We were doing all this extra work and we weren't getting paid for a dime of it. And it was extremely frustrating. And so it was about that time we had started working with Small Farm Central. They had a e-commerce component that you could add on to your website subscription with them. And so we started essentially training our customers. Like, if you want bulk and seconds, we're happy to help you out. We can make it a competitive price and make it right. But you have to lay your money down first. We got to see that online order come through, and then we do the work, and then you get your stuff. And, so it was kind of born out of that necessity. And then a few years later, we expanded our canned and value added products, jams and things like that. And we had the chance to get into the Washington Post holiday gift guide, but they would only accept, people like that we were being pitched like, hey, we'd like to include you, but we can only include people that have a national shipping footprint. So I thought about it a little bit. I'm like, we decided to go for it. And we started kind of a very primitive website on Shopify that would ship that stuff out if people ordered it. And so, both of those e-commerce websites were kind of built quickly out of necessity. And like so many of us that farm, we've got a lot of things we're juggling. And so you work hard and you get it done, and then you forget about it and it just sits there, and it's being only half effective. And so in the past year, we kind of rolled up our sleeves and got some good help and decided to combine all of those. Instead of having two poorly functioning e-commerce sites, combine them into one that would allow our customers to either pick up items at market, or if it's an item that is shippable, have that shipped to them, and build that out from there, with the opportunity to someday hopefully turn that into home delivery as well, if we choose to. We had a short crop last year, and so we decided not to pull the trigger on that. But it's worked out a lot better having all of that e-commerce kind of under one roof. So that's kind of where we started and where we're at today.
Great, thank you for sharing. So I think when we're considering that we've got a smaller group here and we are coming up on our breakout rooms, when we get into the breakout rooms, what we really want to delve into is the pros and cons of different tools that we've all used and some lessons that we've learned, and just share some tips and tricks. I know that everybody, having worked with specific platforms, you've all found shortcuts and tips, tricks, and hacks, as some folks would put it, those workarounds, the ways that you've found to make those tools work specifically for you and your needs. And so I'd like to go ahead and sort us into some small breakout rooms. And once you get in there, if you can just have a nice conversation with whoever's in the room about those platforms you've worked with and anything that you can share that would save somebody time or resources. I'm going to go ahead and sort our rooms here. Go ahead and ask for you guys to share a little bit about what you found in your breakout rooms. If there were some really great resources that were worth sharing. Also, if there was links or resources, we can drop those in the chat so that even if you weren't in the room where that resource was shared, then you'll be able to glean that resource as well.
I think some people can be a little bit intimidated about doing custom pack orders. I know we were when we went to like a full choice kind of online marketplace. We found a lot of pros to it. You know, even if you only have 6 or 8 or half a case of something, you can put it up on your website. It doesn't, if you do that at your farmer's market stand, it gets lost or nobody wants to buy that last bunch of radishes or whatever. But it really, I know that there's been an effort for some of these softwares to like match your produce to the consumer. And our consumer is really self-sorted, and it gives you kind of some real-time feedback about consumer preference. So I'm not sure if there's other CSA type farms out there. We moved to like a subscription based where you sign up at the beginning of the year, but then you get to pick whatever you want in your basket every week. So it was, and we buy in from other farms. So it took the pressure off us to perform every week, and it gave members endless flexibility. But yeah, we really like enjoying packing custom orders. And then there's always a few people who just get the farmer's choice box, and that's kind of what we do with our extras. Anyways, if anybody has a hesitation with that, I think there's a lot of plus sides to it. It does take a few weeks to learn your preferences. And we planted 250 feet of kale and we only needed 40 feet of it. I think that's a common thing that people will diss on CSAs, too much kale or too much that. So it took all the responsibility out of our lap, and it was a relief.
Right. I'd like to just say that we're not a CSA, and switching to just an online farmer's market, it definitely has the pressure off when people are only ordering what they want. There's a lot of customer satisfaction with that. It can be hard to estimate numbers and hard to estimate what we're growing for, but this second year around, we have a better sense of it. So there is a lot of customer satisfaction with that.
Sure. Yeah, we had some great discussion in our group as well. I encourage one of the folks joining us here, Mark, has actually started his own website designed for farmers to kind of start an e-commerce presence. So I would encourage Mark, I think, is going to be putting his link in the chat for everybody to check out. So that might be a good place to start if maybe you're joining this webinar and don't have an e-commerce platform that you're already using. And then, we talked a lot about some of the features and pitfalls of various platforms. Devin and Kristin are joining us from Lancaster, and they've had some success with Square and some things about Square that they found less appealing. We talked a little bit about, things like delivery ranges, which are really important features if you're doing home delivery. That's really something to keep in mind. Other things we talked about were like cutoff times for pickups or at market pickups or delivery deadlines, things like that. Being able to integrate that into your website so that you don't have people logging on at 2 o'clock in the morning to pick up at a 10 o'clock a.m. farmers market, which is something I have all too much personal experience with. Having those deadlines be a feature of your e-commerce is a pretty important feature. And yeah, it seems like there was a lot of good discussion about home delivery, and I think that that is probably something that is going to continue to be an opportunity for farms, and the way these things work, it will eventually be an expectation I think, for a lot of farms as well. And so it was a lot of our discussion was around that too.
Yeah, it's good. We also spoke about that the need for the platform to be able to work on a phone, since most customers are ordering from their phones, and that it's well known enough or well developed enough to be secure. And also Valentina was speaking about starting a new farm and new business, and how you gathering new customers, but also trying to figure out shipping and shipping rates, and how you encourage your customers to be paying those rates, and what it's like to develop a new business at this time.
That's a great segue, Kristin. We actually have on our topic next up, we spoke briefly about marketing initiatives and how you can get your online and e-commerce platforms in front of your customers. Kristin, I know you guys pivoted during the pandemic to sell direct to customers versus to restaurants. How did you meet that market? How did you get that out in front of your local folks?
Right. Because we were so focused on New York for so long. We definitely started with friends and family, as most people do, and asked them to tell their friends and family. We advertised in our local neighborhood newsletters. We did have a base. We had sold at a local market until about 10 years ago, and we still had a lot of contacts from that area. We basically emailed every person we knew, and then let it fall out and see who stuck. And it was, one of the upsides, the very few upsides of COVID, was people were looking for something to do that was positive. They were getting very concerned at least a year ago about supermarkets not having fully stocked shelves or fully stocked produce. And so we had a very positive response at that time. It was something that people could do. They felt like they were helping us, and they felt like they were helping themselves. So we were lucky enough to take advantage of that sentiment.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And would you share with us a little bit about your different products? You've got your pantry products, your cider, and your produce. And I know that there was a complexity there. Could you tell us a little bit about that, and then also how you meet those different customers and get them through that ordering process and get those items to their doorstep?
Sure. So that's something I haven't talked a whole lot about. We also make alcoholic cider from our apples. Obviously, there are a number of legal considerations, with shipping alcohol, with delivering alcohol. So at the present time, we're kind of straddling two different, and I know I just explained how nicely I had combined all of our farm e-commerce into one website. Well, when you're talking about alcohol, it still has to be a little bit separated. So we have one website that we ship alcohol to 40 different states using a third party who handles a lot of the legal administration, tax consideration, and everything, because each state has its own importation laws, and it's a quagmire. And so luckily there's a third party company that kind of facilitates those types of shippable e-commerce for alcohol. So, but in terms of we were also able to add some alcohol sales through the same e-commerce platform that we use for the farm, provided that it's in state, because we do have a direct shipper's license in state. And we also separated this e-commerce company as its own business, and allowed us to buy another license to simply ship alcohol. So essentially the way it's worked is we've designated some things as, shippable, other items that are just for pickup, and then some that are for home delivery, and some that are, combinations of maybe 2 or 3 of those things, using tags in Shopify. And so that will allow folks to check out with one cart. If they're picking up stuff at market, they can choose pretty much anything. If they're shipping, they can choose items to ship. And if they're getting that stuff delivered, they can actually choose anything then as well. So it's a little bit awkward, but we're making it work so far. And there could be a time in which we would undertake the arduous task of adding all of those licenses ourselves rather than working through a third party. And then everything would really kind of be all encompassing, but a little bit of a jargony, rambling kind of answer. But, having the restrictions of the alcohol can kind of put a kink in those plans in a lot of ways. Did that answer the question? I hope.
It did. Thank you so much. Bob, I know that you guys, I read in your bio that you guys stopped going to farmers markets in 2019. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how you keep your online subscription top of mind with your customers, because you're in versus going out and seeing them face to face. I'd love to hear about your strategy and day to day there. Is it time saving, or do you think there's more time that you have to put into marketing now?
We're definitely spending a lot less time dedicated to the selling and the distributing than in the past. We always kind of just do back of the napkin calculations, how many man hours, how many dollars. And we got in a pinch this fall. My wife she's a teacher. She was asked to come back and teach in person. All of a sudden we had to do all our packing on Sunday morning, because that was the one day we knew that we could all be there. Grandma could help out and all the logistics. So put a lot of pressure on us. We were doing about 200 custom packed shares on a Sunday morning with, 2.5 of us. Basically the equivalent of a Saturday farmers market. I think we were doing about $5,000 in sales. We couldn't do that at a farmers market with a crew of 3, I don't think, and still have breakfast and lunch at the house. As far as kind of keeping a personal presence with our members, nobody wanted to look anybody in the eye last year it seemed like the longest time. If I get a chance to run into a member, we do about a little bit more than half of our pickups here on the farm. So there's usually somebody to greet you, and we'll try to ask people if they want to go on a tour or introduce ourselves. We live right there next to the pickup space, so it's easy to be personable, and most people try to avoid us because we will kind of corner them in an open field and not let them leave, just to tell them about how the carrots are going or however it is. Farmigo does do some automated messaging that just reminds people to make an order if they need to make a payment. We're really doing a lot less follow-up. We have a reoccurring customer base, so they're asking questions once instead of retraining everybody weekly, or any new customers. It's usually fairly intuitive. But yeah, we've found a lot of efficiencies in doing the custom pack orders, staying away from the farmers markets. It's very predictable. So if you have the same number of people ordering, we kind of ballpark how many dollars of produce we need in the store, and make sure we buy in extra peaches or don't buy in extra peaches. So it's been really helpful in those respects.
I wonder if any of the panelists have favorite resources that they really just would like to share, as far as, is there a website, not necessarily just the platforms that are running your e-commerce, but are there websites out there where you find good tips, resources, content that you can share? Similarly, is there a podcast or a book, anything that really has helped to form your journey thus far, or something that you're pulling from now?
I can speak to that a little bit. I know as we were, starting to consider the idea of shipping fruit through the mail, which is something we've done on a limited basis so far. I kind of just did a Google search. I'm like, who's doing this? What does that experience look like for a customer or user? So I just started ordering from some of these places that were kind of high up on the list, and just a Google search, farm raised fruit shipped to you. And I would just start getting these packages and trying to understand, how they were packaging them, how they're keeping, preventing bruising, how to build in efficiencies in the packaging so that you're keeping your packing costs down. Just see who's doing it effectively, and just put yourself in the position of a consumer, of a customer, and live that experience, and be critical and analytical. Like, how did I feel? Did my stuff arrive in good shape, on time? Was it, kind of sustainably minded packaging, or was it excessive and I threw a bunch of stuff out? Like, all the things that matter to you as a customer. Go ahead and place some orders and experiment with it and see, do your own kind of market research. So that's just something that I found to be pretty helpful.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's great, Ben.
Yeah, I'd echo that too. We did sign up for somebody else's CSA just to kind of get a feel for, what to expect and how they do the packaging. I think that was a good insight just from, everybody's going to come up with their own program, I guess, but I think that's a great market research strategy.
Right. I was saying a little bit in our breakout room, one of the things I really disliked about Square was how often technical questions you were kind of foisted off into the sellers community and meant to find your own answer. But the truth was that a lot of the answers are there. So that was something I had to admit to myself and use.
We've got a question in the chat for custom pack orders. What have you found to be the easiest way to organize and or label orders efficiently and keep packing errors to a minimum? Anybody who'd like to answer that, please feel free to go ahead.
With our software, it'll print off a sticker, 3x5 sticker or so, and we use that as our pack list. We'll make sure that when an item goes in, it gets scratched off. It's set up in the same order that it's printed off on the list, so you can't skip over one, right? So it's alphabetical, heavy, medium, and light, and then alphabetically within those 3 categories. So it's all about the setup. It would take us almost as much time to set up and, break down all the packaging, having carrots bagged, apples bagged, everything portioned. And then the software, I don't know how people will be able to do like the email orders and keep track of everything inventory wise. That with just a simple software, it really prints off the list, tells you what to do, just follow the directions and set yourself up for success by taking the extra half an hour to make sure things are exactly where they need to be.
Yeah, I would echo that. We're a little more low tech because we still have a few local restaurants. We take all of our information from Square and put it on our own Google sheet that we share with all the employees. So everyone has access to that pick sheet. But the real key is to set up your packing area so you know where everything is. And so when it's time to pack, you have the bags or bins that everything's going into. Every item is in its own separate space so that the packing itself takes a much smaller amount of time than it would if you hadn't had everything set up and ready to go before you start.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, knowing that your e-commerce platform is going to be able to deliver, customizable reports so that you can get all your pick sheets and your pack out sheets ready to go. And it helps design your workflow, making sure that everyone's, communicating well and checking things off, and, really saves you some heartache down the line.
Great, thank you for sharing that. We've got a nice wrap-up question here. I'd like to, if the panelists would share with us, where are you headed as far as your e-commerce journey, your online stores? Are there any new opportunities or initiatives you're looking forward to exploring this season or in the year ahead?
I wanted to talk about something. I think it was one of the best things that happened last year. often in a farm you have your exact orders that you have to meet, and then you have to manage the rest of your inventory, what you have extra. And a lot of people do donations, or you have like Second Harvest come in and pick up your extra produce. But this year we put a button on our site that says New Bethany Box, and New Bethany is a local group that has a food pantry and a soup kitchen for families in need. And so our customers, just by clicking on that box, could donate $25 worth of produce. And what was new about it was we were actually getting the $25. We were being paid to go and pick that produce and deliver it to the food pantry, as opposed to just if we had time or we had volunteer to go and take it. So it was a really great way for our customers to support us as farmers and know that that food was going to people who needed it. And we had really a tremendous success with that. And so if there's any way you can do that, if you have anything extra, it's an easy way for people to contribute. So that was great. We're going to do that again this year.
Yeah, I can add to that too. We're doing a similar kind of thing with part of our e-commerce. We've never had a CSA at the farm, but when we launched the new e-commerce site, we created a harvest box that gives us kind of the flexibility if we're maybe a little bit long on one thing or another, that if someone orders a harvest box, they don't want to wait in line at market, they just want to get a box of our stuff and take it home, and we can do a little bit of a bulk discount. We committed last year to donate 1 box for every 10 purchased to a local food recovery agency. And so, it just, with everything going on last year, felt like the right thing to do. And I think I think that message resonates with customers, and certainly it's something that we feel good about committing to. So that'll certainly be part of what we hope to encourage in the upcoming year. And we're also going to be experimenting with will it ship, looking at things that we grow and determining will it ship, and if so, how far, and how do we package it, and how do we make sure it gets there on time. And a lot of friends of mine that live in other parts of the countries will be, either the recipient of some gratis purchased produce, or we'll end up with soggy cardboard on their stoop. I'm not sure which, but we will be putting the work in to figure out who rolls the dice and who gets what. So we'll figure that out this summer, hopefully.
Ben, kind of following up on that, is that a response to having too much supply, or is it just the goods that ship well, or?
It's a little bit of both. I mean, I think our farm being a little bit apple centric, so our primary crop is something that can ship well. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a little bit of born out of my apple nerddom and growing a whole bunch of weird, elusive, and rare varieties that apple nerds across the country might be willing to pay a little bit more for. I've been reading about this variety, whatever, Darcy spice, for forever. I would pay $3 an apple if I could just try one, something like that. But also, we've been at markets long enough now that, we have a lot of great customers that have, they've kind of moved other parts of the country, and they often say, hey, we'd love to keep supporting you if there was any way to do it. Well, here you go. You can get some apples sent to you. So things like that are kind of what's influencing that decision.
Something that I noted, or that I keep repeating to myself, is it's really 2 separate businesses, the distribution and the production. And we're trying to tease Down to Earth Harvest and, kind of Bob Todd's family farm a little bit apart from each other. I think part of a branding thing, but I noticed, Ben, you kind of did that where you guys have 2 different websites. It's Three Springs Fruit Farm, and I forget the name of your e-commerce, but once you get to a certain scale, you do kind of have to almost, I don't know, I feel like I haven't quite flushed it out in my head, but I think that's where we're trying to go.
Yeah, and kind of my rationale behind separating those 2 things was, hopefully in the interest of building a more robust, home delivery type of business, I knew that it would be more successful if we were offering things that our farm didn't grow. And so my idea with having a separate branded company to do e-commerce and home delivery was, once our farm got good at it, or at least experienced at it, and hopefully good at it,
Mhm.
that we could, potentially, invite other friends of mine with farms in the area to partner with us. And, everybody gets kind of a stake in the business, and we can grow this into something that benefits not only our farm and our cider company, but also, other farms in the area, bread bakers, other food artisans from my local area. And through this additional license that we purchased, we could actually deliver other Pennsylvania beer, wine, and spirits, or ciders from other producers. So, we could home delivery of all farm sourced produce and goods, and, local alcohol producers as well, could all be, checked out in one cart and delivered in one order, right to people's homes. So having a separate brand, that way the other farms don't feel like, oh, we're just putting stuff into Three Springs Fruit Farm's pile of stuff to sell. They can hopefully take some ownership and become partners in this new e-commerce home delivery business.
That's really interesting. We did we did something similar, and I think what you also did, Bob, too, was when you have a e-commerce site, it's very easy to put a new item up that's selling someone else's squash or something that they might have a bumper crop of. So we have a lot of farmers nearby, particularly CSAs, who only could push so many cucumbers at a particular time of the year. So we became an outlet for their extra produce, but it was very clear and easy to keep it, even though it was on our site, it was branded as, it was their name on it. It was Pan's Forest Squash, for instance. So it made it easy to be able to sell each other's produce, and mostly we were doing that at cost. It was just to help each other out, but there are opportunities to make some money on that too.
Right. I think if somebody's willing to, because it is almost a separate business, if somebody is willing to be, such as Ben, that kind of somebody who makes the path, and is a little bit more inclusive, I think it can strengthen the farmers around you. And that's kind of where we see us being in a few years, trying to make sure that it's super easy for friends and neighbors to get local produce, and that we're supporting other local, small farms. So yeah, we'll see how we get there.
Right.
Thank you, panelists, for sharing all of that good feedback. Is there anybody are there attendees that have any last questions as we start wrapping up here today? If you've got a question, feel free to send it into the chat, or even just, you can turn on your mic and chat if you'd like at this point. We'll just be wrapping up. I'm going to do a screen share where I will just share some slides that'll share each panelist's name and the name of their farm and contact information. So if you'd like to follow up, you can reach out to your fellow farmers and converse that way. Thanks to everyone for your time here today. I will leave the webinar up and running with these contact slides just so that everybody can check in and see those for the next 2 or 3 minutes or so. So feel free, if you've got anything you want to chat about, throw it in the chat, grab these contact details, and otherwise we'll start signing off. I really appreciate everyone stopping in today.
Thank you, Tabitha.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.